Thank you very much. So in my presentation, I will focus actually on one research. This is something I've been involved with. So we talk about the patterns of drug use in Estonia. So if we talk about illegal drugs, then for people mostly it's linked to addiction, overdose, intravenous use, deaths, but these are the most extreme. So this is the most extreme problem when it comes to drug use in general. So often we talk about this metaphor of the iceberg, because then these are these things which get the most attention. Then maybe people come into contact with this more, and because of this attention, they will get more interventions. But we cannot draw any conclusions based on that for the entire drug use. So if we think that the total of drug use works like this, then we are going to see problems. So one of the goals which would then try to map what's going to happen under the water, what is the hidden consumption. So for that purpose, we had two-tiered research where we had web survey first, 1,565 respondents, and amongst these respondents, we chose 35 with whom we carried out sort of in-depth individual interviews. So the goal was to focus on this kind of patterns where the people do not really understand yet themselves. It will become an obstacle for the daily functioning, or they would have serious problems. So the goal was to find out what are the main factors which impact the pattern of use, and also differentiate different target groups based on these factors. So when I looked at these different factors based on these interviews, they could be divided into three main categories. So either drug-related, so what people used and how often, and what were the quantities, what were the methods. Then individual factors, for example, how does the person assess their mental state when they use drugs? What is the meaning behind the drug use? Or the significance of it? So how is it related to the self-control aspects, for example? And the last, the environmental factors. So this is the context. So where the drug use takes place. Is it at a time off, if it's recreational, during work, ceremonial, so there are many options. So comparing these different factors, then we try to differentiate these target groups, because some of the part of the factor could be very important for certain target group, but not for the others. And these different target groups, I can't really get into all the details here, but I would like to mention a few of the examples here. And this was quite an extensive survey, so if you can look it up. So if you look at the drug-related factors, then the classical question was what are the drugs people use? And so we had average more than 2.58 drugs. People who used only one drug were minority. So this is what supports this, what we often say, that more we have some combined use. So a drug-based approach is difficult because you can't have a target group based on a specific drug, because you used to be able to do that before, but that people who use heroin, people who use cannabis or something like this, but today it's becoming more and more complicated because you get more and more drugs. There's so many of them, people mix the use of drugs. One example where this sort of we can see more of the use of one drug could be the sort of self-medication, self-treatment group. So people who think that they have a specific, they sort of have a perception of a specific problem, which is alleviated by a specific drug, and so they find that this is alleviates the condition. So this makes more sense because if you think you have a specific problem, then you have a specific substance against it, not that you try to use different things on a daily basis. Mixed use is a very commonplace during the recreational use, so if you go out clubbing. So when it comes to drugs, we also looked at the frequency, how often it happens. Then again, what supports this initial metaphor of the iceberg, then most people do it rarely. So here we find this sort of random use. This is also one of the target groups, the importance of random use. So these are the people for whom it's difficult for them to talk about a specific pattern because it is random. Because we talked about it as an opportunistic use. So people have no plan to use, but it just ends up somewhere in a situation. Their friends are offering, and they think, okay, today is the right time to use, and they just try it. And it's not like an objective or goal, and then I'll go out to try to use drugs. So for this kind of random use, we could see that these people linked use with the less health problems, which is understandable because the less you use something, then less of an impact you're going to have. But it doesn't mean that this causes no harm, because one thing is long term and the other one is short term. So these people who very rarely use, they can be in danger of overdose because you use rarely, you have no experience, you don't know what the substances are out there. So this is where this risk will go up. Now, if you look at the individual-related factors, one of the main things, as it was asked, why do people use drugs, we had a list of 15 different reasons. So this is what we found of different surveys. And people were specifying it themselves, what are the reasons why people use it, and in average it was more than 5 reasons. So this shows how many reasons there are why people use drugs, and at the same time it shows us how complicated this world of reasons is, that it's sometimes very hard to differentiate these reasons. Maybe that was also the problem, that we listed all the possible reasons. So what is your particular relationship to drugs and your justification? So we're able to categorize them again into 3 main categories, because it is difficult to work with all these different reasons. So this is where we found that the main 3 categories. So the recreation. So this is your objective. So you want to have fun, you go to a party, relaxation. So this was the most popular group. Then others, therapy. So as I mentioned before, the people perceive that they have a certain problem. There's a negative indicator, and they feel that the use of drug will help them to overcome this issue, so they want to normalize their condition. But this capability, we talk about enhancement, so from getting from 0 up. So people don't really have a specific problem, but it's not good enough, and they see a possibility to get to a higher level. So people use stimulants, for example, in order to improve their focus, so they can work better. People who want to expand their awareness with some drugs, so this could be a motive as well. And then when the things get interesting, it's like where is the overlap, because it's not that you often have only one motive. So we can also say that more specific the use is for your motivation. So if people have only one reason, then they're likely to be less risks, rather when people have all the motivations, so that everything is important. So this kind of pattern of use is harder to keep under check. So now if we look at the environmental factors as well, again the recreation use, this is a dominant. So for most people, drug use is related to free time, not for everybody, but for most. And this is a social activity. So if people are using drugs alone, so this was related to long-term or experienced user. Or we could refer to some set of problems. But where you use, for example, if it's going to be recreation, nightclubs, or at work, or at school. So these are the factors which indicate the potential intervention place, because if we talk about recreation use, then this is a very social activity. So important resource are the friends of the person. And now coming to conclusions, what we can conclude from all this? Then there are more conclusions here, but I'll try to pick out a few. So first of all, then the pattern of use, trying to figure out what the pattern is like. It is not enough if we only look at what people are using or how often they're using. So this kind of ignores the entire context, why this person is doing it and under which circumstances. Then it means we can't really differentiate this based on the basic data. But at the same time, the differentiating the user pattern is important, because we have different target groups who have different needs. So if we were to say, so if you look at the iceberg metaphor, so if we were to presume that one small part of it, which is above water, is the entire iceberg, so this is the intervention is based on, then it's quite likely that we'll end up with an issue somewhere. So the target groups have to accept these interventions. And based on the survey, we can also see that although there is no such thing as safe drug use, then not all people understand that as a result of drug use, they would have some serious life-affecting problems. But this is an important topic for us, because if we were to look at everybody who uses drugs, that this is a problem, and we see them as somebody who needs help, then it doesn't, for some target groups, it doesn't, they can't identify with that. So they don't feel that they need assistance, but at the same time, awareness raising and sharing of information and support is important. So this is what they need. So taking into account the needs of the target group are very important. Understanding the target groups needs dialogue. So we cannot really have sort of one-sided risk communication where the specialist will say what is the right thing to do and how does it work. We need to hear what these target groups are saying themselves about the drug use. because people really do know themselves the best. So therefore, it is very important. We need to understand the needs of the target groups, because if we talk about the problems related to drugs or the harm related to drug use, then it doesn't really speak to a certain target group, because for them, use of drugs is, this could be one part of it, but it doesn't really, it's not about their use, so therefore they can't really understand the message. They don't feel it is for them, and that means that we will use the credibility of ourselves as partners in the dialogue. So that means that this is the where we lose the meaning, and this is a very important problem, because these interventions which function well need the dialogue between both parties, because on one hand we have the expert knowledge, but we should not forget that these people who see this use on a daily basis, they have their own knowledge as well. So we mentioned community or the practical approach, because the best knowledge meets somewhere in the middle of this dialogue. And that's it for me. Thank you. Thank you. So this was a very important message when it comes to prevention. So there's one question which is very popular. So out of three, it was most popular when it comes to alleviating work stress. Was this one of the reasons? So we didn't quite get to this recreation level, but it wasn't towards the end. It was about a quarter of the people who responded. So there was not a separate work stress question, but different stress relief. Because even when we looked at the interviews, then the share people who said that they're using the drugs due to work, so only for work, so that was a very small share. Because first it's like work stress, and then they also use it for recreation, so it gets mixed up, but it's one of the factors. And this survey is available on the National Institute of Health Development website, and there you'll find more information.